Another plane carrying Syrian refugees landed in Toronto just this afternoon. It's the third of many set to bring government-sponsored refugees to Canada. Toronto's Pearson International Airport has a terminal set up to receive them and give them the basics, including a social insurance number. Upon arrival, they're refugees, but by the time they leave the airport, they're permanent residents. Rebuilding their life in a new country will require much more thought, though, including building a financial identity here. We continue our Welcome to Canada series with Ratna Omidvar. She is Executive Director of the Global Diversity Exchange at Ryerson University and Chair of Lifeline Syria. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bruce.
You have personal experience. You were born in India, you fled Iran and arrived here as a refugee. You didn't want to get a credit card. How come?
I was really, I'm a fiscal prude. Always have been. And I resented, I didn't like this idea of buy now, pay later. It was completely strange to me, and I didn't take out a credit card for a good 18 months. And then you realize it's like not having an identity that is useful to do things other than buying and paying for things. So then I finally gave away and got myself.
So you have some well-earned empathy for people who will arrive unfamiliar with our banking system and our tax process. What do you think the surprises will be for these newcomers?
I think the surprises will be around automation, around accessing benefits that only flow to a bank account. So for instance, if you have a bank account and you file your income tax return, it generates credits like the GST tax credit or the Canada Child Benefit credit. All this is tied up with your financial identity. And if you remember that many of these people have lived in a precarious situation in various outside Syria and Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan, they may have been functioning on a cash basis.
Right.
So trust in our banking institution may well be an issue.
Who will take them to get that first bank account?
In the case of private-sponsored refugees, the private sponsors will take their sponsored refugees or refugee families to the bank almost in the first week. It is so important to get that done.
And what role have the big banks here in Canada been taking in that integration and welcoming immigrants, refugees or not? Is there a clear process? Are they doing the right things?
It's a pretty clear process, and I must commend the financial institutions, in fact, any consumer-facing business in Canada, in recognizing where the new customer is coming from. So they have, they authorize credit cards with no collateral for up to $500. They make it easy. They even have staff in the branches speaking certain languages. They have developed financial literacy toolkits that are being translated into Arabic at this point. So they've really stepped up to the plate.
Budgeting will be a huge issue for these families. They're supported for that first year, but this is not, this is not a whole bucket of money. What happens if they go over their budget? What will the sponsors do?
We encourage sponsors to be to exercise what I would call tough love, because after 1 year they really have to look after themselves. So there's no point in generating expectations that will not be met. So most sponsors will develop a budget with their family, will sit down and discuss the budget, and the budget will be adjusted based on the unique needs of a family, and they will come to an arrangement and say, here's our responsibility, here's your responsibility.
What sort of training is your organization doing with the sponsors so that they understand some of the cultural context? For example, we did a story on Islamic finance recently, and one of the things was about interest payments, that within that faith, that's really a principle that doesn't work. How do you ensure that the Canadians on this side listen with the openness and understanding that they think differently?
We are very fortunate in Canada and in Toronto in having more than 11,000 Syrian Canadians right here in the GTA. And we're working with them to generate those kinds of toolkits that will equip our sponsors in knowing the do's and don'ts in interacting with the sponsored families. And there are many do's and don'ts, and we're learning them incrementally at a fast pace around the financial literacy piece. I think we are encouraging sponsors not to treat refugees like children and to give them independence so that they can learn as they go. This is really important.
And at the same time, the financial literacy concepts might be completely new, and the language is, for many of them, completely new. How do you bridge that? You don't want to treat them like kids, but you may have to speak to them like you would to a 5-year-old in terms of your language structure.
Yes, you have to simplify concepts, but we also have translators on site, so that gets helped. But I think standing by their side and answering their questions and helping them along is really, really important. You know, when I came to Canada all those years ago, I had family here who helped me understand the way you know, banks work and what you need to do, and it was pretty simple. It wasn't new for me in that sense, but there are certain things that are pretty unique in our way of doing things.
What is important about fueling entrepreneurship that we so often think about when we think of immigrants, refugees or not, that they have that spark to make a life here?
Refugees have a huge entrepreneurial spark, and some of the spark has been gained by necessity. As they live in precarious situations in different parts of the world, they're not allowed to work, so what do? They become entrepreneurs. They make stuff, they sell stuff. Some of these refugees may well want to continue that. So then they have to learn the rules and regulations governing the sale of products, the production of products, income tax, sales tax, all of that. The biggest challenge will be access to capital.
One last question. The response has been overwhelming, at least from my standpoint. Do you need to temper expectations about how quickly these people will achieve economic independence? Do you worry that people will be disappointed if they're not all perfect and up and running, living these great lives within 5 seconds?
I try and temper these expectations and warn people, let's not romanticize the refugees or their families who are coming here. They're human beings. They will make mistakes. They will go over budget, like you and me, right?
Yeah.
They will make financial blunders, like the rest of us. So I'm trying to continue to give that message, but I am completely overwhelmed by what I see as understanding and compassion in the eyes of the sponsors. So I'm very hopeful.